Across the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy, one name brought silence to even the boldest civilizations: the Drajul. Towering reptilian giants with armor-like skin and voices like grinding metal, they were known as the strongest species ever recorded. For over 8 centuries, they had spread across space like a storm, conquering over 300 star systems with no signs of defeat or mercy. Their ships were dark as obsidian and shaped like hunting blades, designed for fear and destruction. Wherever the Drajul went, resistance was short and surrender was common. Their strength, size, and advanced weaponry made them nearly untouchable. At the center of it all stood their supreme warlord, Kator, a legend even among his own kind. Taller, faster, and smarter than any who came before him, Kator was undefeated in combat and had not seen real challenge in decades. But behind his glowing red eyes and countless medals was a growing restlessness. Victory after victory had become meaningless. Every enemy fell too quickly, and every planet offered nothing new. He wanted something more, something worthy. Then came Earth. It started by accident. One of their patrol fleets near the Orion Spur picked up strange transmissions coming from a blue planet circling an unimportant yellow star. At first, they thought it was just noise, until the signals were decoded. What they found puzzled and amused the Drajul commanders. Earth's broadcasts were filled with things they had never seen from a spacefaring race: laughter, music, fiction, and dreams. There were voices filled with emotion, movies filled with hope, and speeches that carried ideas of unity and compassion. Kator watched hours of Earth's old broadcasts in silence, his warlords laughing behind him. "They dance," one hissed. "They sing," another mocked. "They cry," a third sneered. To the Drajul, who lived by strength and survival, these messages made Earth look weak. There was no mention of conquest, no signs of galactic control. Earth had no advanced military fleets, no starbound weapons, and worst of all, they hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel, pre-FTL as the Council called it. That usually meant a species wasn't ready to stand among the stars. But to Kator, it meant something different. It meant Earth could be his final challenge. The unexpected kind, the one history would remember. He stood before the Galactic Council, a collection of powerful species that acted as a neutral body for interstellar law. Most races feared the Drajul but remained silent, hoping to be spared by staying uninvolved. The chamber was massive, with floating platforms and silver walls covered in glowing symbols. Kator's voice echoed through it, clear and cold. "I invoke the Declaration of Honor, Battle," he announced. Gasps filled the chamber. The declaration was ancient, a formal ceremonial challenge that could not be denied. When one species called it, the other had 30 galactic days to respond. Surrender or fight. No other options. But most couldn't believe who the target was. Earth? A planet barely visible on the star charts? A world with no interstellar fleet, no ambassadors, no seat in the council? The council representatives shared confused glances. Some whispered in disbelief. Others looked at each other with pity. A few turned away, not wanting to witness the slow destruction of a species too young to understand what was coming. The countdown began. 30 days. Earth had to respond. Back on their throne world of Korva, the Drajul prepared their ships. Massive war carriers rose from the black mountain docks, casting shadows on the lava-lit skies. Soldiers trained in zero-gravity arenas, perfecting their combat moves. Plasma cannons were loaded. Orbital gates were powered up. Yet something was off. As the days passed, Earth said nothing. Not a word, no response, no military warnings, no diplomatic messages. The Drajul interpreted the silence as fear. To them, this was the sound of surrender. Some warlords began laughing again, wondering why Kator had even bothered. But the Supreme Warlord was quiet. He watched the stars carefully, sensing something beneath the surface. Still, the official belief was simple. Earth would not stand. It could not. The Council even prepared a report on how to handle the planet's population after the attack, expecting Earth's quick defeat and collapse. Some races planned rescue missions. Others considered mining the planet's resources once the Druzhul were done. The fate of Earth had already been decided by everyone, except Earth. As the final hours ticked away, Kator gave one last broadcast to the galaxy. His face appeared across every known channel, eyes glowing like twin stars, voice low and steady. "The hunt begins now," he said. "And when we are done, the stars will remember the last prey." The camera zoomed out, revealing the full Druzhul fleet, dark, endless, and ready for war. Ships vanished into hyperspace as they began their journey towards Sol, Earth's forgotten system. But as they left, far from any known channel, a single message blinked in the corner of a hidden surveillance satellite. It was sent from Earth. No fanfare, no anthem, just 3 words. 30 days passed and Earth remained completely silent. No warning, no plea, no surrender. To the Druzhul, that silence meant only one thing: cowardice. In their eyes, humans had seen the coming storm and accepted their fate. Across the galaxy, many species began preparing memorials for the soon-to-be lost world. A few mourned Earth's innocence, while others simply moved on, already speculating about what would be left behind. Earth had no ambassadors in the Galactic Council, no alliances, no warships listed in any registry. The Council archives labeled them as emerging, a species still stuck near their home star, barely reaching their outer moon. To the outside world, Earth was unarmed, unaware, and unprepared. But behind the silence, hidden far from prying eyes and distant satellites, something entirely different was taking place. High above Earth, orbiting silently within the shadows of the dark side of the moon, a station invisible to most sensors stood awake and ready. Inside it was Admiral Yelena Ortiz, the woman few knew existed and fewer still understood. She wasn't listed in any public military document. To the people of Earth, she was a ghost. But to the hidden leaders of humanity's defense grid, she was the one who had kept Earth's real strength a secret for nearly 2 decades. Once a celebrated physicist, Ortiz had vanished from the public eye after the Andromeda Treaty fell apart 5 years earlier, an agreement between Earth and several minor alien factions to share knowledge and avoid conflict. But when the aliens turned against each other and one tried to claim Mars, she saw the truth. Earth would never be safe unless it hid its cards and sharpened them in the dark. Ortiz stood at the edge of the command bridge, hands behind her back, her gray uniform glowing faintly from the data displays surrounding her. Beneath her feet, Project Longbow had already been activated. It was the most secret effort in Earth's history. Dozens of hidden shipyards beneath the oceans and on the dark sides of moons. Thousands of engineers and scientists working in isolation, building weapons and vessels far beyond what anyone believed Earth could create. These were not public space programs. These were based on salvaged alien tech from crashed probes and forgotten satellites. Everything Earth had secretly learned in silence was now being turned into action. In one shipyard buried beneath Antarctica's ice shelf, a sleek black vessel rose from its hangar. It was the ESS Valiant, the first human warship capable of bending space using stolen gravimetric drives. Another facility deep in the Mariana Trench was finalizing quantum mines that could collapse small sections of space if triggered at just the right frequency. None of it was legal by galactic standards. But Ortiz didn't care. Laws were written by the strong, and right now, Earth's survival depended on no one knowing it had claws. She walked slowly through the command center, nodding to officers as holograms displayed incoming data. A countdown marked the arrival of the Druzhul fleet. Less than 4 days remained. The fleet would come through the Sol Gate like a tidal wave, expecting no resistance. That assumption would be their first mistake. "Status report," she said calmly. "Longbow assets are online and cloaked," her second-in-command replied. "All systems green. Solar defense grid is in stealth position. ESS Valiant ready for deep space intercept on your order." Ortiz looked at the stars through the window. Somewhere out there, a fleet of monsters was heading straight toward them, laughing, cheering, imagining Earth already on fire. But they had made one critical error. They believed silence meant fear. Ortiz knew better. Silence was patience. Silence was strategy. And sometimes, silence was the sound before the storm. In the quiet depths of Earth's secure communication bunker, another signal prepared to leave the system. Ortiz had waited until the final hours to release it. Timing mattered. The message needed to be heard when the Drajul were certain of their victory, when their guard was lowest. She leaned over the console, typed in a short sequence, and watched as the transmission loaded. Elsewhere, on the Drajul flagship Oblivion Fang, Supreme Warlord Kator stood before a gathering of his warlords, arms crossed, surrounded by the smell of molten iron and engine oil. His eyes narrowed as a junior officer approached with a datapad, face pale beneath scaled markings. "My warlord," the officer said, bowing low. "A message from Earth." The room grew still. Every eye turned. Kator took the pad without a word, pressed the activation symbol, and watched the screen light up. There was no grand speech, no visuals, just black, with a simple line of text glowing like a match struck in darkness. "We are ready." For the first time, Kator said nothing. His warlords shifted uncomfortably, uncertain how to react. The message didn't ask for peace. It didn't explain anything. It didn't come with a cry for help or a last-minute plea. It was too calm, too confident. He narrowed his eyes, reading the line again. Somewhere deep in the instincts that had guided his victories for centuries, something cold crept in. Doubt. He had seen prey beg, scream, even fight back. But never wait. Never prepare in silence. Never accept the challenge like this. What was Earth hiding? Ortiz, watching from her station, let a small smile form on her lips. Not out of pride, but because she knew the game had finally started, and humanity had made the first, unexpected move. No longer a shadow, no longer a mystery. Now, Earth was something else entirely. The stars waited. The silence had ended. The Drajul fleet arrived like a black storm, pouring out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their warships vast and countless, stretching across the darkness like a wall of metal and flame. There were 500 of them, battlecruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts, each one larger than entire Earth cities, their hulls armored with dark alloy and bristling with weapons that had destroyed worlds before. To any observer, the sight would have brought fear and awe. The Drajul came with the certainty of victory, their engines humming with power, their commanders already discussing how long it would take to reduce Earth cities to ash. They expected resistance, but nothing serious. After all, Earth had no known fleets, no visible defenses, no seat at the council. They believed this would be over in a matter of hours. But from the moment they entered the system, things began to feel wrong. Their long-range sensors immediately detected strange gravitational readings near Neptune. A Drajul scout ship went to investigate and vanished. Seconds later, a ripple of quantum distortion tore through the area, as if space itself had bent and snapped back. One of the cruisers was pulled into a sudden artificial gravity well and crushed like a tin can. Shockwaves traveled through the fleet. Warnings lit up across their command boards. Traps, unseen and unknown, had been placed across the outer planets. Saturn's rings exploded with hidden mines. Jupiter's orbit revealed slingshot beacons throwing debris at impossible speeds. Entire formations of Drajul ships were knocked off course before they could even approach Earth. What was supposed to be a clean march turned into chaos. Inside the Oblivion Fang, Supreme Warlord Kator stood unmoving, his hands gripping the edge of the command platform, eyes narrowed. This was not what he expected. This wasn't just luck or desperation. This was planning. Human planning. Someone had turned the entire solar system into a battlefield long before the Drajul arrived. He clenched his jaw and ordered the fleet to tighten formation, moving toward Earth's orbit in a thick wedge. They would push through, regroup, and overwhelm the humans with superior firepower. But before that command could be completed, something new appeared, the ESS Valiant. It did not announce its presence with size or sound. It simply appeared, out of folded space, cloaked until the last second. Compared to the Drajul ships, it was small, like a knife among hammers, but it moved like nothing they had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with adaptive armor that bent light and confused sensors. Its engines twisted physics, allowing it to change direction in an instant. The moment it entered the battlefield, a Drajul dreadnought turned to face it, and then vanished in a sudden bright rupture of energy. The Valiant had fired a single bolt of exotic matter, compressed and focused into a beam that split atoms on contact. The dreadnought, designed to take hits from entire fleets, fell in seconds. Panic spread through the Drajul ranks. Their sensors struggled to track the Valiant. It weaved through their ships like a ghost, silent and deadly, targeting engines, command bridges, weapon nodes. It did not need to destroy every ship. It crippled them, forced them to collide, shut down power cores, and vanished again before counterfire could reach it. More human ships began appearing from cloaked fields, fewer in number but equipped with technology the galaxy had never seen. They struck with precision, disappearing into asteroid shadows, reappearing behind enemy lines, fighting with strategy instead of brute strength. In the command chamber of the Oblivion Fang, chaos was breaking out. Kator watched as more and more of his fleet fell into disorder. He barked orders, trying to regain control, but for the first time his voice didn't bring instant obedience. The warlords below looked unsure. Something had shifted. The prey was no longer prey. Earth had not been behind in the race for power. It had been hiding, quietly building its strength while the rest of the galaxy looked away. The silence had been part of a greater plan. Suddenly, alarms blared through the flagship. A piercing noise echoed across the bridge. "Incoming projectile," someone shouted. "It's heading for us. Unknown composition." Kator turned toward the window just in time to see a brilliant arc of light slice through space. It hit the Oblivion Fang's starboard hull with a blinding explosion. The entire ship shuddered. Systems flickered. Fire erupted from one side. For the first time in centuries, Kator was thrown from his stance, falling to one knee. A piece of fractured console struck his shoulder. His armor cracked. Blood, thick and black, dripped onto the floor. The room fell silent. Drajul do not bleed. Not in battle, not in front of others. But now, their god of war had been struck. And he was hurt. Kator stood slowly, his eyes burning not just with anger, but with something else. Recognition. The humans had done what no one else had managed. They had drawn blood from the undefeatable. His lips curled in something between a smile and a snarl. This was no longer a simple conquest. This was war. The war was no longer a raid or a single strike. It had become a storm of strategies, ambushes, and rapid shifts across the solar system. The Drajul, once believed to be invincible, now found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. A species that didn't follow the rules of war. Earth's forces didn't match the Drajul in size or raw strength, but they didn't try to. Instead, they played the game on their own terms. Hidden AIs cracked into Drajul targeting systems mid-battle, turning their own weapons on each other. Swarms of autonomous drones flooded asteroid belts, blending with the rocks before striking from behind at vital weak points. Guerrilla tactics once used by small rebel factions were now applied with terrifying precision on a galactic scale. The humans adapted faster than the Drajul could react. A strategy that worked once failed the second time because the humans had already rewritten the playbook. Their ships fought in silence, cloaked and unpredictable, disappearing into wormholes or warping behind enemy lines. Kator, aboard his damaged flagship, ordered full-scale counterattacks, but those only led to more traps, more confusion, and more losses. Each time the Drajul advanced, Earth's forces bent like water, then struck like lightning. Kator's commanders demanded new tactics, but he refused to abandon the old ways. He believed in strength, in glory, in face-to-face combat. But this wasn't the kind of war he had prepared for. Ortiz knew that. From her command deck aboard the ESS Aegis, she directed Earth's movements with a cold, focused calm. She didn't need glory. She needed survival. and she knew exactly how to turn desperation into victory. In one sector near Mars, she ordered a fleet to fake a retreat, drawing the Drazul deep into an asteroid field. Once surrounded, hidden satellites detonated, collapsing parts of the field and sending thousands of rocks crashing through enemy hulls. In another sector near Titan, a human ship pretended to go dark, leaking fuel and heat bait. When 3 Drazul cruisers approached to finish it off, the ship's engineer, Lieutenant Arya Lin, manually overloaded the Singularity core, staying behind to make sure it didn't fail. The explosion took all 4 ships with it, including hers. Ortiz watched her sacrifice in silence, then nodded to her crew. No one said a word. Earth would mourn later. Now, they had to keep fighting. On the other side, not all Drazul remained blind to the change. A young warrior named Zalrin, newly promoted and still unscarred, began to question his people's arrogance. He watched as human ships, smaller and stranger than any he had trained to fight, outmaneuvered cruisers twice their size. He saw wounded humans refuse to retreat, choosing instead to hold corridors, buy time or sabotage their own positions if it meant winning. Zalrin had grown up believing his kind were untouchable. But now, with each passing battle, that belief cracked. He began storing intercepted transmissions, listening to human messages not of war, but of love, hope, and sacrifice. One message, recorded from a dying pilot, stayed with him. Tell them Earth doesn't run. Not today. Not ever. These were not words of weak prey. These were words of something else, something dangerous. Still, Kator refused to pull back. Pride would not allow it. Even with half his fleet in ruins, even with multiple dreadnoughts lost, he pressed forward, calling for reinforcements from deep space. The Drazul homeworld, Vathurak, stood behind him like a final fortress, untouched for centuries. No enemy had ever reached its orbit. Kator was determined that Earth would never see it. But Earth was no longer asking for permission. Ortiz had already planned the final push. With 3 main fleets split into hidden jump points, she gave the order. The ships moved like shadows through space, bypassing weakened Drazul lines and striking at their supply lanes, energy hubs, and relay systems. One by one, the enemy's communication networks went dark. One by one, Drazul command centers lost control. Ortiz didn't attack the fleet head-on. She cut off its mind and let it stumble in the dark. In one final coordinated assault, Earth's forces emerged from warp near Vathurak's system, unannounced, unexpected, and unafraid. The Drazul homeworld lit up with defense signals, ancient planetary shields activating for the first time in generations. Sirens blared. Red lights flooded the towers. On the ground, citizens stared into the sky, not understanding what was coming. For the first time in recorded history, an enemy fleet had breached the Drazul's final sanctuary. On the bridge of his wounded ship, Kator stared at the incoming human signatures. Silent, blood still marked his armor. His fists trembled not from fear but from something far worse, uncertainty. The humans had done what no other race had dared. They had fought smarter, harder, and refused to bow. His warlords looked to him for orders, but he had none. He had underestimated the one truth Ortiz had always known. Humanity never fought fair when it had its back against the wall, and that made them the most dangerous enemy of all. The Drazul homeworld, Vathurak, once the heart of fear across the galaxy, now lay scarred and shaking beneath the thunder of dropships. Human marines dressed in adaptive armor and supported by drones descended across burned sky bridges and shattered fortresses, not with rage but with grim purpose. They met little resistance. Most of the Drazul military was already broken, and what remained had lost direction. The proud war machine that once ruled 300 systems now stood confused, watching from the shadows as humans advanced, not with brute force, but with order, discipline, and silence. In the capital city, once lined with statues of conquerors, walls cracked and banners torn, Admiral Yelena Ortiz stepped from her command ship and walked through the smoke toward the Hall of Warlords. Her team remained outside. This meeting was not for soldiers. Inside the ruined throne chamber, Lit by broken screens and flickering fires, Kator waited, standing, injured, still holding on to the last piece of a legacy built on war. Iodor's armor was dented, his right arm bound in bloodied cloth, but his eyes still burned with fire. Ortiz didn't raise her weapon. She didn't need to. She came not to kill, but to offer a final choice. For a long moment, the two stared at each other across the room, two leaders born of different worlds carrying different truths. Then she spoke calmly. She told him Earth had won, not by being stronger, but by being willing to change. She offered peace, a chance to preserve what was left of the Drajul culture, to rewrite their future instead of erasing it. There was still time, she said, to choose survival over pride. But Kator's voice, though softer than before, held firm. He did not understand peace without dominance. He could not imagine legacy without conquest. He spoke of honor, of tradition, of ancient strength. But his words fell into the silence like stones into a void. Ortiz did not argue. She simply listened. And when he was done, she left him there, unbound, unbroken, but alone. That was the end, not with a final battle, but with the slow collapse of a belief system too rigid to bend. The Drajul did not die by fire. They faded piece by piece, their people abandoning the old ways, questioning the stories they had always believed. The war was over, not because Earth destroyed its enemy, but because the enemy destroyed itself by refusing to evolve. Across the galaxy, systems once ruled by fear found new leadership. Refugees returned to their homes. Even some young Drajul like Zal Rin left their war-torn cities behind and joined interstellar rebuilding efforts. Earth, once seen as small and weak, now stood as something else entirely, a force both feared and respected. Months later, in a shining chamber high above the Galactic Council's central world, representatives from every major civilization gathered in silence as Earth was formally recognized as a Tier 1 civilization. The title brought more than honor. It brought influence, voice, and status among the stars. But humanity had no interest in empires. They did not claim territory. They did not rewrite laws. They simply took their seat and waited. There were still wounds to heal, planets to rebuild, people to remember. The war had changed them too. In a final act that echoed across the galaxy, Earth transmitted a message on every major channel, in every known language, voice steady, words clear. It was neither threat nor boast. It was truth. Humanity does not seek war, the message said. But if you bring it to our doorstep, do not expect mercy. And then the transmission ended. Across the stars, no one spoke for a long time, and in the deep silence that followed, a new era began, not ruled by fear, but by the quiet, understanding that the smallest voice, if patient enough, could shake the loudest giants.